thinking, Siri, like a lot of these problems that you were addressing in your career, like whether it's at Instamojo or Head Out or Growth School now, I mean, they're very context dependent, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you need a lot of knowledge about what problem you're trying to solve, rather than just bringing a big set of knowledge of theoretical foundations into the problem. And I think that design thinking approach to looking
Yeah.
at the world is a fundamental shift in how we think about the world, right? And how we solve problems. Rather than saying there's always a set answer for all the problems, we need to
Right.
empathize with the uniqueness of each problem in a particular context. And that's what I want to know, Siri. Like, what were the problems you were trying to solve in these three organizations? And what did solving these problems teach you about being human, or even being an entrepreneur in that context?
Wow, I love that question. Beautifully like pieced together. Let's start with Instamojo, right? And with Web Mutiny, I think it was an exploration in business, and I love design, so it was that side. And Instamojo was a client at Web Mutiny,
Yeah.
so I switched over. And the reason it fascinated me so much was because before that I was a blogger, right? Because this is the time I started, talking to startups, and 64 notes exist already, and that is one of the blogs that survive today.
Mm,
But back in the day, I used to have like quite a bit many of blogs, and blogging was a big thing, like how vlogging is today,
mm,
right? And I used to make AdSense money, and in between, I wrote some ebooks that I wanted to sell. But how do I sell them, right? And I tried to find it out, and it was supremely difficult to collect payments online.
mm,
Like internet was there, connections were there, people were there, audience was there, like value was there, but you could not do e-commerce transactions,
mm.
right? And the value exchange that for any entrepreneur is that I give you value, you give me money, right?
Yeah.
But the give me money part can't happen because there's no such infrastructure, right? If what we call payment gateways, where you put in your credit card and debit card details, those are called payment gateways. And to back then to get it right, you would need to like sign a contract with the bank, deposit like some 5 lakh rupees or whatever, and guarantee that there'll be like POS machine kind of business. So only big people could afford it.
Mm,
And then comes along this small startup on our radar who wants to enable all of this for small businesses, right? And back then, the small businesses was not such a clarity. It was more like, hey, digital people, like, right? Like people are coming online, moving their business online. So educators, bloggers, and I was one of them. So I was like, hey, I love this idea. Like, I want to, this story I want to participate in. This
mm,
story I want to be a part of. So I joined there, and like I was in the room where this concept called payment links gets created. Now everybody has it, and even Stripe recently launched their payment links, learning from the Indian companies. But to be in the room and with the people who created that concept to begin with was
mm,
fascinating,
mm,
right? And I'm not saying there were not precedents earlier. There was this idea with Gumroad who created these, and even Gumroad exists even today, where they will allow you to create this landing page,
mm,
right? And just collect payment, which is very similar to the kind of product we had. Of course, we started with a very store-like approach versus individual in these things. But then more and more we realize at scale that it's just payment that you need,
mm.
right? So a link which directly opens payment form.
Got
Everything
it.
else is distracting because most of the commerce was happening, the conversation was happening, and I would send you a link,
Got it.
right? Like for example, you would discover my blog, you would discover my course, then you would text me on WhatsApp, hey, I want to buy a course, and I would send you a link and transaction happen.
Yeah.
Right. So the only thing you need to say, I'm paying for this course. That's it. Nothing else. Everything else is just a distraction.
Nice.
Because we know in e-commerce, if you add number of steps, people drop off.
Yeah.
So that is when we created payment links, right? Just a single link. And this came from our customers, right?
Okay.
They were like, oh, I use link to collect payment. I use link to collect payment. And some of them literally had coined this word payment link, and we just took it from their mouth, and we were like, customer knows how to say it, how to explain better than us.
Yeah.
And we changed our copy, and suddenly we're like, oh, ads are working better. Like, everything is working better because this language makes sense to people. Payment link, what could it do? It's a link that does payments. Perfect. This is what I want. So that was the first company. And all of this, like, travel has always had a special place in my heart. And especially because, like I was talking to you earlier, like, while being, whether I'm walking or in a bus or a train or any vehicle, just being on the road, moving different places and exploring different places, it just that is how I think I've propelled myself into new places and new thoughts, and it's just been a key instrument. In
Mm,
fact, Bombay, like where we met, I remember I was going to give a talk at one of the colleges, and there was a break flight, and while going, like while landing, it was sun was setting, so I see city, I see the beach. I'm like, nice. I'm getting to see the sea for the first time from a distance. And the flight was going to Kerala, Kochi, and in Kochi, I would encounter the sea for the first time. Like I would touch the sea for the first time because I'd never seen the sea. And but on that, when it was taking like a break at Bombay Airport, while we were landing at the Bombay Airport, it was sunset. But while we were taking off, it was the sun had already gone down.
Hmm.
And Bombay at night, if anybody has seen it from flight, is just
Beautiful.
oh, it's another like I just remember being glued to the glass
Yeah.
and constant, like I could hear my heart just going like, let's live here. This is it. We gotta be here. We gotta be here. Like, and when that message from inside just doesn't stop. Like it's so strong.
Yeah.
Like it's just like it gotta happen. And 1 year later, I was in Bombay with single bag, right?
Wow.
And so that's what I mean by like changing places, new places, and that small travel trip kind of like really aided. And um, so when head out kind of like as conversations started happening, I never saw myself in like a tourism industry.
Hmm.
But for me, it was never about tourism. It was always about the experiences that change and your perspective that help and add something to your life. And looking at travel as that, as
Yeah.
just generally like, oh, we went there and had fun. Because for me, travel is like a little more sacred. So, and meeting a founder who felt very similar, and then joining hands with Head Out was like the most fun thing. So that's what I was doing at Head Out, helping define and help people find those experiences that would really be meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And then growth school happens, and me and education go long back, so much so that I dropped out of college and flunked in my 12th board exams. And not many people know that, but me and education, like institutionalized education, like started growing apart very like after 8th and 9th, especially that magazine thing was a revolting thing. And then it was just a very sour relationship to a point where in my college, I was like, I can't waste a single more day,
Yeah.
right? The same thing playing out because and another thing that happened during college was I was already a professional designer who was making money, right?
Hmm.
And I took up fine arts, and fine arts is like painting and this thing, and they have a subject called applied arts, which is a very primitive way of looking at graphic design.
Hmm.
Like any designer would tell you, they don't look at their field as applied arts, but artists like to think graphic design is applied arts.
Yeah.
We share first principles, like just our theory, color theory, and things like that.
Yeah.
But the way we use them, the way we use them is also very quite similar, but the intent is very different,
Sure.
right? What you solve with that is very different. One is expressive, one is like, utilitarian versus like behavior changing thing,
Yeah.
right? Versus art is a statement usually, though at times you can blur the lines.
Yeah.
However, coming to that aspect, like education was always close though. Right, I come from family of teachers. My maternal side, grandfather was a professor, and my grandmother was a teacher. My mother is a teacher. My her sister is a teacher. My father has been a teacher. I have loved teaching. Like I teach on YouTube. So coming from a family of teachers, teaching and learning, both sides are very close to my
Hmm.
heart, as you can tell. So when I see, so Vaibhav, the current founder, was been a long time friend. He was in fact customer of Instamoser, and we
Oh,
met
okay.
at one of these colleges that I was giving a talk at. He was giving a IT Hyderabad. Both of us were giving a talk at, and we happened to meet there because I was the next speaker after him. So we get talking, and we're like, hey, nice. And then we keep meeting each other every now and then. Then he was starting this LinkedIn workshop program, and I was like fascinating how it's growing up. And then lockdown happens, and everybody shuts down, and YouTube like starts taking over. I start live streaming, and then we decide, hey, then we had Anudeep, who was, one of the first people to join Webhub, the founder, and they started developing this program around UX and design.
Hmm.
And he contacted me, why don't you join on board? So we got like, best people on board and created like a massive course of like everything we knew.
Nice.
And it was all around the knowledge from what we know,
Nice.
happens in the industry,
Nice.
not the theory side. Sure, you want to learn theory, here's the link, you go crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am not interested in teaching you color theory, which thousands of the people are teaching.
Sure.
I want to talk to you about the implications of color,
Yeah.
right? implications of color culturally, implications of color, like when you put this color versus that color, what
Yeah.
implications of color for different times on a screen. Are you putting on a screen versus this thing? The practical knowledge,
Yeah.
what we call,
Which you
right?
can't find on the internet as easily, right?
You
And
can't easily, yeah. It's very experiential, right?
yeah,
Something like, and this is what we people in academics would call applied knowledge, right? The applied version of the theoretical side,
sure.
right? That's why there's applied and theoretical physics, right? So this is the applied side of design, right?
Yeah,
Which I'm
yeah,
trying to teach, and that is where I start feeling like there's the satisfaction and the meaningfulness of such a mission is just another level, because I relate to both sides, right? As a teacher, as a creator, at the same time, content creator, I've struggled to be able to, and I still like I have so many challenges to improve and make it make sure the masses understand, like it's relatable, it's valuable, and as a learner I know how I value those things
yeah,
when somebody does that.
yeah. So in
So
a
for
way,
me, yeah,
with
yeah,
growth school, you're creating a product that would meet the needs of a learner like you, right? And
yes,
to some respect, so you're using your own experience as a use case in some respect, right? So
yeah, at least to drive it, right? Like
yeah,
of course I'm not the only, as a designer you realize that you're not the only one. There
yeah,
are other people who will have different opinions, and you learn to learn from everybody, but the drive comes from there.
sure,
The need and want, this deep seated desire to solve that problem comes from there, to
yeah,
change, have that impact comes from there, right? Because I know so many people, when they were given just the right nudge,
yeah,
how they evolved. And
true,
I've seen that for myself, right? So my agenda is not to, like, with growth school, to solve like like all the education problems of the world, but education had one promise, at least when it comes to career building,
yeah,
right? That I'll get you started on this career. And I think we have failed generations after generations on that
mm,
respect. Like, that's why people come out confused, right? Because the systems have not kept up to date with what is the reality of life, right? Of the reality of society.
yeah.
How do you create an influencer in traditional institutes? How
Mm.
do you create a content creator? And
Yeah.
everybody today will have to be a content creator,
Yeah,
right?
because I think it's also the importance of understanding that the jobs in the future, we don't even know what jobs will be available in the future. And in a lot of ways, we're teaching kids that will have to create their own jobs because they're not going to have
Right,
the same career, 10 years down the line. It's not the same world. And I think it's a challenge, but it's also really important for people from outside the formal system to actually create. So I think like what growth school is doing, if you really pick up steam over there, with that company, I think a lot of formal institutions will realize that these are models that need to be integrated into the regular system. And I think it's very hard for the formal system to innovate because the stone and the foundation is just so hard laid that
right.
the innovation will not really come from the formal system because there's just so much to change and so much bureaucracy. So the innovation will really come from organizations like Growth School